has not received proper financing. So when we now begin to talk about the feed and fodder sector, which is a subsector of agriculture, it has the same, what I can say, it falls in the same curse of underfunding. Until recently, we began to see that banks are beginning to wear a cap of impact-oriented lending. Why are we progressing as a financial institution and we are not speaking to agriculture, which is what is driving our country, the country where we are doing business? If you look at that question, it's not a question of selecting agriculture as a more competitive sector for lending. It is beginning to ask yourselves, how come we are irrelevant to agriculture in terms of how much we are dedicating to agriculture in general, and yet we are very present in manufacturing and other sectors. And all of them are being fed by primary production. So we have come a long way, and I'm happy to see that we begin to see financial institutions now putting an eye and saying, look, we can put a portfolio and dedicate it to feed and fodder or to livestock. Financial institutions having products that are labeled cow product or beef product. Those are very good steps. However, I would like us to note that we have not reached there. Because they are working very carefully into that sector. And some of them, what I have seen even in other countries like Nigeria, is that they walk into a sector, but they also look for external financiers who are going to put a portfolio in their bank to kind of support them to enter that sector, lend cheaper, and give flexible financing so that they don't burn their fingers in the name of trying to become relevant in agriculture. But they don't walk in with their own money. Because if they're picking money from the market at a certain rate, and then they come and lend to agriculture, and then they burn their fingers, they're going to affect the depositors' money, which is lying in their banks. So I think we are really at the heart of that. But I'm very happy to see response in the first place, where you see banks being present in discussions like this. And I'm hopeful that being a progressive country, as far as the growth of the financing sector is concerned, there is a possibility that in the next decade, we begin to see parity between how much finances are being dedicated in terms of lending, credit, capital, investments, and so on, to agriculture. And of course, that now begin to affect feed and fodder, which we're talking about today, beef, dairy, and other enterprises, the same way we see lending into manufacturing sector. So we are on a good speed, I think, and I'm happy to see this kind of response. And to end my remark on this, Brian, is to say that there's a very close correlation between what is financed and what grows. What is neglected by the financing sector tends to slow down. So there's that chicken-egg relationship that if it grows, finance want to give money to it. Also, if they give money to it, it grows. So as long as we continue connecting these two, where financing is present in the sectors we are discussing today, then most likely in the next decade, we are going to begin to see growth. And the opposite is true. If we continue having these two not talking, that every time we have an expo like this, we don't see exhibitions or booths that are run by the financing sector telling the sector, look, come here, we have a product for you. If we begin to see that demarcation, then of course we have a problem with the growth of the sector.
I'll bring you back on the financial modeling for the feed and fodder sector and the larger livestock ecosystem. But let me bring in Dr. John on this one. He's describing risk. And the biggest challenge, or rather the biggest, how do I put it? The biggest tip off for any financier is to look at whether or not that risk is either minimal or it can be mitigated. Now, there are interesting factors into risk right now. One of those key factors is climate change, which is by the day becoming a concern for most financiers. The adaptation, the mitigation. I'll give an example. One of the panelists earlier on the panel in the morning said that right now, it is dry, for example, right now it could be dry in the northern area of Kenya, who are known traditionally to be livestock practitioners, pastoralists, and they rear the cattle and all that. It's dry right now. When it rains, it floods. Yeah. So those are two risks, natural calamities and a climate change problem. And so if a banker, for example, or a financial institution is looking at an opportunity to finance, they are looking at those key elements of de-risking these possibilities. And there are so many others. There could be risk, there could be market access, either challenges to go to market. How do we help the farmer to de-risk all these facets so that they are able to be bankable and they are able to access financing to make a business case for them?
Thanks, Brian. I think let's first of all get to the basic.
Okay.
Kenya, 70% of Kenya's land mass is semi-arid and arid,
Sure.
and which is a perfect for ranching.
Yeah.
So we are a beef country. We are a ruminant country. We have the third largest herd. So we stand from a point of advantage.
Yeah.
We have the resource that occurs naturally. In the morning, we were also told that grass is the biggest fodder crop for Africa and for this region.
Yeah.
So grass for beef naturally supports. The question in the room is how do we take advantage? Because with climate change, we are seeing more drier and drier seasons and more wetter and wetter seasons with flooding. So during dry season, we know there are opportunistic businesses that then produce beef, and this is the rise of the feedlots. But the biggest opportunity is how do we harness the wetter and more wet seasons? How do we then cut, preserve, and store for the dry seasons? And even during wetter seasons, in the morning we're told, and this is a fact, being a veterinarian, when cows or when ruminants eat grass that when it's green, they are constantly starving. So they eat dry matter. And so when they eat lush, there's huge opportunity. Even during the start of rains, there's so much that you can feed. But looking at bankability, when moving from subsistence production to commercial production, farmers really, or producers plan for their season because they have the end game. And so bankability requires shift from business as usual to commercial production. And this calls for planning for fodder and feed as a nation and as a business. That's the only way you become big bankable.
Great. Let me bring in Dr. George on this one. And we're speaking about the profit angle of it. At the end of the day, you are getting money from a commercial lender. But your mandate as a development partner is to support without necessarily expecting profits thereafter. How does the farmer get ready to be supported by grants, whether conditional or none?
Very interesting, Brian, for that question. And maybe just to give the status. This country, we require about 55 million metric tons of dry matter to feed our livestock in this country. But we are only able to produce about 40%. Then that gives a deficit of about 33 million metric tons of dry matter. And that's, in essence, gives a huge demand pool that need to be plugged in. And as my colleague David has mentioned here, you see the issues that have been plaguing agriculture as a whole in terms of financing and also be able to move our form of production system from basically that is very fragmented and sort of traditional to be more of a commercial-oriented and modernizing the production system. And that's where now you find the guys within the commercial sector, they may not be able or they're not willing to plug into the gap at the very early stages. So then what happens? So we need to have this partner or this player who is probably willing to plug in into that space so that they can be able, one, either offer some kind of financing in terms of to prove the concept that be it agriculture or even going deeper, even the subsector like feeds and fodder production, that there is a business case to it. And that's where now the donor community comes in to be able to offer some resources to prove that concept, that there is a business case here. And once that stage is breached, and that's where now you start seeing the commercial sector coming in and willing to be able to invest to that. And over in addition to that, the advancements that are happening within the technology that now the sector, people are able to have sort of data-informed decision-making, because there is probably we'll be able to build a body of knowledge or data that people can be able to bank on and can be able to do some predictive models and tell that maybe based on 1, 2, we can be able to see the markers that are going to drive the change within the sector. And this is where now you're even starting to see new products that are coming in to do like 6-disc hedging. You can see some very innovative products like index-based livestock insurances that are willing to come in and hedge that bit of the production. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Let me bring in Dr. Cheriot, Dr. Cyril Cheriot from the Kenya Meat Commission. As an off-taker, are there concerns that you raise with the farmers when you are sourcing for this meat downstream? What are some of these feed and fodder related concerns that you raise with the farmers as you take off the meat? Yeah.
Thanks very much, Brian. We off-take animals from all over this country. Yeah. And from farms that we don't have a lot of history about their management. In the morning, it was discussed the aspect of traceability, which I think is quite critical, and it's going to be a game changer in the beef industry and meat per se. So there are so many concerns that we often have as an off-taker. One is at times when we go out to the farmers, we specify what kind of animals we require. But more often than not, you will find a farmer at the gate presenting animals which may or may not meet the specifications. So when we conduct our ante-mortem inspection, an inspection that is done to animals before or prior to slaughter, we often reject quite a number. But being the people we are, at times, and the nature of Kenya Meat Commission, we've got uses for all sorts of animals. Recall this is a processor that utilizes all, because we also produce meat and bone meal and blood meal that is also used in non-ruminant animals. So some of the specifications that we normally have, the concerns currently, that is quite huge and really eating into, and I'm sure all processors are also having the same problem, is ailments. Those are worms. Worms, animals are not well dewormed, so you end up condemning a lot of offals, which actually has a lot of economic sense to this country. On a single day, I can lose liver worth 600,000 shillings. And that's not optimum operations. So I'm imagining when we go to the optimum, how much we're going to lose. Another aspect that we normally get with our farmers is, right now we are talking about hides and skins. At times we don't get the right hides, and yet the animal looks good. But unfortunately, we cannot optimize on the hides. And you must have been told by other speakers probably that at times the cost of the hide surpasses that of the carcass. So this is an area that we really need to look into and ensure that at least our farmers do what is expected of them. Thank you.
David is laughing. Let me bring in Dr. George once again. He mentioned very interesting figures. 55,000 million metric tons of feed and fodder required. There's a deficit. In fact, the deficit is even more, 60%, which is at 33 million metric tons. How do we plug that? Has it always been met, or how is it normally sorted?
Honestly, in the morning, you heard one of the panelists saying our animals are in perpetual hunger, because from the start to the end, we at no any point in this country have been able to have enough feed and fodder to feed our livestock. So that's why you see even the animals, and even Dr. can attest to this, even for us just even to attain the optimal weight for our animals, we either take so long for those animals to gain the weight, but probably it has taken so long even for the farmers to be able to even appreciate the value of that animal. So the question you're asking is, how do we track that? It's the straightforward answer, we have never been able to track that. The second part of that question is, so what is happening to be able to track that? And that's why you see there has been those efforts to try and people coming up with those innovations to start producing what they're calling the nutrient-dense sort of feeding elements. And they are doing that to try to take care of maybe a small percentage of the herd of the animals that probably are targeted for the premium market. So, and that proportion is very small. So what remains, the rest of the animals, they've forever been emaciated. They're not able to meet the market value or not able to produce enough to be able to capitalize on the potential of those animals. And that's a big risk that we have as a sector.
Great. Before I bring it in for session 2, let me just speak to the people who are watching from home and around the world. You are tuning in for the Kenya Meat Expo 2024, streaming to you live on NTV from KICC. This is our second panel of the day. We are speaking about making a case for feed and fodder sector in the livestock sector, a sector which has been for long been ignored for whatever reason, but now is when we are raising the conversation to enable as many practitioners in the sector to be able to make a business case and put it as an important factor of production. The panel is taking the second round of questions before we now throw it into the crowd for any responses, comments, rejoin us and all that. But if you can make it here to KICC, it's day 1 of 3 days of a sizzling experience at the Kenya Meat Expo 2024, where we seek to make an economic transformation agenda under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda for the livestock sector. Coming back to Dr. John Wamahio, and we've now set the stage, or rather the premise, for getting the feed and fodder sector on the pipeline and mainstreaming it as a factor of production. But we must also manage costs. As we speak currently, a lot of feed and fodder that we get is either imported from Uganda because it's affordable, especially for the chicken and all that, the chicken mash and all that, because it's affordable, or it is produced locally. Talk to us about managing the costs for feed and fodder as a factor or a component of production, because again, it has to feature in your capex somewhere.
That's a very good question. So for primarily the red meat in Kenya is produced under 3 systems. One is the extensive production system, which is purely rain-fed and grazing. Second one is semi-intensive, where you provide supplementation and a lot of grazing on natural pasture. And the third one is intensive. And intensive really is what the urban and peri-urban really understands, where you do zero grazing and you provide everything, all total mixed ration to the animal. And this is where the problem starts. For poultry, pork production, which is quite intensive, Kenya, we depend on rain-fed fodder production. And that comes with seasonality. And we have our neighboring countries who have more than average rainfall pattern per year. So even their rain-fed production really supports the region, hence the cost. But we also have an advantage on extensive and in semi-intensive, where we have production in the ridgelands from birth or had calf cow operation supporting the meat processing. However, this is not enough. And so where it matters is during drought. Do businesses then stratify? Are you good in breeding and producing yearling and selling those to those who know and have investment in fodder for secondary production that then supports and supplies to the end market? And the ball game changes with very intensive production system, where if you want to use rain to replace irrigation, then bankability question and business model question, depending on the season. But you cannot replace rain with irrigation. You cannot replace irrigation with rain. So rain supplements irrigation for intensive. And that is where then we need more investment for further production, if need be.
Great. Dave, so once again, coming back to the financial sector, what are the best financial modeling, or let me put my question this way. You've already consulted with these guys for quite some time. You have done your research. How then should financial institutions put down financial models to meet the feed and fodder sector? And what would be the key components?
Yeah, I think here and I think that's why we have been very soft on the financing sector without having to slap them too hard, because they have departments for risk assessment. And what they say is that the money they are holding is depositors' money. Yeah. It's not their money. Yeah. So they have to be very strict on their appraisals.
But they have an option of fractional banking, interestingly.
And of course, and they're also very profitable.
Yeah.
By the way, because they are not seated here, we can say a lot of things about them, isn't it? When they are seated here, sometimes we just allow them to tell us how the situation is. Yeah. It's a very organized sector, very organized sector. And in Kenya, it's end to end. Yeah. It's really a very refined product. But we are talking about a sector that is unstructured, totally unstructured. In fact, if you look at it, it is not even understood.
What you would call chaos.
I was avoiding to say chaotic because it's also my sector. That's where I make a living. So I think for you, you take a lot of liberty. And why do I say this? We are talking about a sector that is also unarticulated. You heard it this morning when PS Jonathan Mweke talked about the presidential launch of the Land Commercialization Initiative, yeah. And which is true. He said what is happening. But I have seen 2 releases of advertisements. I don't know whether the rest of us have been following the Land Commercialization Initiative. And what I noted is that they indicate that the enterprises you can do in the land that government is providing for private sector investments, you can do a list of things. And what is listed there that is very close to feed and fodder is livestock enterprises. So I remember 4 years ago, we were involved in these discussions, and feed and fodder actors were part of those who drove the discussions to the cabinet on how the land that is being commercialized can be used for feed and fodder. When I say it is not well understood and not well articulated, when it gets to the operational level, feed and fodder is now labeled livestock enterprises. But it should start on its own if it was organized, and if it was an economic sector, it didn't need to be subsumed under livestock. It could be called by its name, feed and fodder. And therefore, if you now go to apply for you to do investments or such government land, and you find that secretary in government who says, what do you want to do there? And you say, feed and fodder, they're not going to ask you, on the list, I have livestock enterprises. Yeah. Is it livestock? No, it is fodder. Then you're not qualified. So the fact that was not well articulated in the Land Commercialization Initiative, we are now trying to fight very hard to discuss with government. Please, when you mean feed and fodder, please put it as feed and fodder.
Autonomy.
So really, it stands on its own. It can command its own investment. Okay. As it is now, it does not even have professionals. If you go to any gathering which is discussing feed and fodder, the technicians are called daktaris, like Cheriot here and Dr. Amahio. I don't know whether to suspect whether Dr. Amai is also coming from science. Probably I'm the only economist here. But you could see that all these guys are actually livestock scientists. And it is a feed and fodder discussion, which is a crop, and where the feeding professional is actually an agronomist. Yeah. Then it has no authority. It doesn't have an authority. Dr. Sarah in the morning said that we have a disaster management authority, but we don't have a feed and fodder authority. Yeah. So we are more like a disaster forecast, and therefore it lacks that kind of a recognition. In an economic sector, it would not be struggling to be recognized to get products in the bank. And you asked me a question about how should financial products for this kind of a sector look like. Now, with all this kind of risk, I see that we require flexible financing. I have had discussions with people who are investing in feed and fodder, and they'll ask you, if you go to a bank and they give you a loan, first of all, they give you a tenor for about 5 years if you qualify. Yeah. But they also ask you to begin to pay money on a monthly basis. Some of them may give you a grace period, moratorium, perhaps 3-4 months. I don't know. There's this kind of flexibility. But then, when you go to the lending requirements at CBK, there is no distinction between a risky sector and other non-risky sector.
So it's blanket.
So they'll tell you that we can flex, we can give you a moratorium, we can be able to discuss about a repayment period, we can remove the application, some things here and there, some details. But when it comes to the flat rate, the minimum flat rate and what they're supposed to add on top, because now it is they're calling it risk-based lending. Like if they think you're riskier, you pay more.
Pay more, yeah.
So what does that mean for feed and fodder? In terms a sector that can easily be played up and down by climate, it is most likely going to be riskier. And therefore, to get the advantage of this kind of cuts on the interest rate or a longer grace period for a sector that is riskier is a bit hard. So what I had in mind, and maybe those of you who are seated in the audience and have had an experience of blended financing or just banks going out of their way, is that we have to come together as a financing sector and say, is it possible to make a very strong case of the potential earnings of the feed and fodder sector for the country? And you cannot make a case of feed and fodder without pulling in livestock, because it's an input sector to livestock. And therefore, to build a proper case to demonstrate how profitable it is, it can't stand on its own, because it is given to the other sector, which is livestock. And I don't know whether those who were here in the morning, you saw how meticulous the downstream processes are. A gentleman stood here, talked about how people out there are liking our meat.
Yeah.
Meaning that the demand pool that we expect in the next couple of years, the question is, are we ready?
Are we ready?
And if you ask the financing sector, they'll tell you, we are thinking about it. So basically, systems are not go for Kenya, but demand pool that is expected in the next couple of years is going to be huge, and we have to act now. So perhaps the financing sector have to put the act together and say, let's look for external financing, let's look for patient capital, let's contribute 30% and have somebody put 70% of money they don't require for the next 10 years. Yeah. And that way, we can now be able to give a single-digit lending for anybody who wants to invest in these sectors that are labeled risky, and for sure they are.
But Dr. George, he makes a very beautiful case, especially for the feed and fodder sector and as far as commercial lending goes. Yeah. I'd like you to speak on behalf, not of USAID, but on behalf of development partners and the role that they play in augmenting some of this commercial lending that goes on. Because I see, for example, Bank X has partnered with IFC, which is the private investment wing of the World Bank, to be able to support farming in this section. And then this farming is guaranteed, or there's a credit guarantee system that has been provided. Please speak to us about the role of development partners in also shaping some of these financial models that are advanced towards farmers, livestock sector, and the feed and fodder subsector as a whole. Because commercial banks, while they're still evolving and getting into that momentum of funding the feed and fodder sector, USAID and the other development partners already smelt the coffee and are running with it. But your core mandate is not necessarily commercial. You are more of impact. Yep. So what would be your role, and speaking from an industry perspective once again, or in augmenting the efforts that are being made, though little, by the commercial sector?
Thanks. And this, I think, the role of the development partners and also the guys who are implementing programs are probably not for-profit driven. And it's more of impact. And this stems from the fact that, and especially most of the practitioners or most of the guys within that sector, and these are the small-scale farmers we are talking about, they're the guys within the pyramid, the guy we call the bottom of the pyramid. Sure. And that's why it's very wide. And because of the nature of their businesses, they probably, the financial sector, they see them as not bankable enough. Yeah. And now this is where the guys who are coming in within the development sector, not for profit driven, they look at the case-by-case basis. And most of those things, they are being scripted by the fact that there's already a proven case for those guys who have adopted the commercial model of the farming. They're able to make economic or financial sense. And now the developmental sector comes in. One, I said something to like proving the concept that if you are able to support these guys who are within the primary production to be able to increase on their production, they can be able to upscale in their terms of their output. And once they upscale in terms of their output, they're able to net a bit more in terms of the overall income for the households. And now that it's where now the developmental sector, they are willing to sort of, quote unquote, risk part of the resources that they have, either through a grant mechanism, whereby they are willing to do either grant funding to some of the investors who are willing to go into such sectors. That is one. Then two, also, they are willing also to come in and do some form of a grant fund mechanism, whereby they are willing to bear some risks in terms of the guys who are either even going even venturing into the commercial arm of the rendering. And those are the scenarios that are coming in. But the ultimate driver for that is, and it's based on the fact that if we can be able to support the primary production to become more productive, to maybe do X times what it could have produced, these guys are able to gain more in terms of the net income for the households. And those incomes now they can start to plow back into the production. And now from there, and you see even the banking institution, the commercial institutions, forming some sort of, maybe the CSR, you can sort of call it, they're coming up with foundation whereby they are starting to nurture some sort of not-for-profit driven, but the end game is if they can be able to nurture that through that platform for the foundation-based, now they can be able to graduate those people in towards the commercial arm. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Cheriot, one last time, and then we now take questions and rejoin us from the audience. Dr. Cheriot, when you offtake, and now you have the livestock at KMC, the Kenya Meat Commission, you've taken the carcass, and now there is the other byproducts. I'd call them byproducts. You can title this question, Stretching the Coin, Going the Long Haul. So how are they also managed so that the farmer, or KMC in this case as the off-taker, gets the most out of, let's say, one animal? Because there's so much that would come from, let's say, a bull. When you slaughter it, there are other parts of it, the kidneys, the liver, then there is the head, offals and all that. How do you treat, what is the treatment so that the farmer or KMC in this case get the maximum economic value out of one animal? In short, are there wastages, or is there a circular economy kind of an outlook?
Brian, what we do as a commission, we do periodical market surveys to determine prices for our livestock. So we do them basically every 3 months to inform the prices that we're going to offer farmers. So we are as competitive as possible. But at times, of course, you might want to give a price. And unfortunately, when the quality of animals, like we often see during drought, an animal would still be, having a certain weight, a certain carcass, but the quality might not be as good. So this will definitely appear through our sales. You might find our customers saying, oh, no, the meat is not as good as what I bought last month. So we really determine. But what we have done as a commission to even out that, we are beginning with support of development agencies, we're beginning to contract suppliers who can ensure that at least we get everything. Quality throughout the year. And I'm happy to say we are open, we still contract as long as you push a business case that really can convince us to put you amongst our suppliers through contractual supplies. So Kenya Meat Commission processes everything. So out of that, we are able now to give a margin to the farmer. And I'm sure currently we are really giving a price that is friendly to the farmers. And we can always see this through the interest aroused by the suppliers.
Top of mind, how much would a farmer attract from one bull?
Depending,
standard weight and everything.
the average animals that we get is about 280 to 300 kilos.
Yeah.
That when you convert into carcass at good conformation of about 50%, that's close to 150 kilos. So 150 kilos times our best price now of 455 will give you about 58,000 or something like that. I don't know. I'm not so good at maths nowadays, but I think it should be. Most farmers actually get around 56. But the other day, I want to really, Brian, I really want to pronounce this because we last week, or about 10 days ago, one farmer supplied us with a bull, which was born in August 2021. So you can see it's not even 3 years. The bull weighed 1,080 kilos, live weight. And the most interesting about thing, the young bull, the conversion was way above what we often know, because it gave us a yield of 700 kilos. So this is, as a veterinarian, it puzzled me. And we're going to reward that specific farmer because honestly, by all means, because I think we paid in excess of 288,000 shillings. And that was record broken in Kenya Meat Commission since its inception. Yeah. So there's money in beef.
I hope the young people are listening.
This is, it was a Frisian bull. And you know, Frisians are dual purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I hope the young people are listening. Before I start to pass the mic around, panelists, do you have any comments, any rejoinders from fellow panelists, so that as we build the conversation towards the audience, we could perhaps pick it up from there. Do you have any interventions from the submissions that were made? Yes, George.
Just a quick add-on, and this is specifically for the producers, and not necessarily for the fodder producers, but the livestock keepers in general. Okay. And I think this is for the industry of takers. And I think maybe Dr. Richariot has started to allude to that, whereby maybe we should start to move towards like quality-based pricing in terms of the farmers, what they are producing. Because right now it doesn't matter whether I produce grade 1. Okay, maybe there might be a slight difference in prices. But in terms of the farmer appreciating the value for him to put in more to be able to produce maybe A1 premium product, am I able to be compensated enough so that I'm motivated enough to be able to produce more and produce better quality consistently throughout the year? I think that's something for the industry of takers.
Quality-based pricing, I like that. David, you have a response?
Not a response, but another rejoinder for,
No
I wanted to request remarks from the people who are involved in of taking beef. Yeah. Either here, like Dr. Chiril from KMC, and any other person on the audience who is doing that. One avenue that banks have explored for them to be able to lend without much fear is contracting, where, for example, if I use KMC, KMC contracts a large-scale commercial fodder producer to supply consistently the quotas that supply KMC. So on a Pareto perspective, they know where, say, 80, 70% of their animals are coming from, and then they decide we are going to be in charge of fodder supplies for that area so that our business can survive. Maybe KMC is not a good example because if KMC makes a loss, we can bail it, we can put money from the exchequer. The government does that for state corporations and KCC, Kenya Airways, and so on.
The budgeted, yeah.
But I would like to know, in the mind of a private off-taker who may not have the advantage of being bailed out in the event of becoming insolvent, would that be something to explore, where the banking relationship is pursued by the off-taker on behalf of the primary producer to give an advantage to the commercial for the producer to get financing from a bank?
Bana, you may make us not live here right now because you're making the conversation very interesting. It's the same question I asked George on also the role of development partners, because there are normally some guarantee funds that accompany that. So perhaps also maybe George, if you can tie it closely to that, maybe you'll respond later. But let's leave it at that. Present the mic now to the public to ask a question. Or Dave, do you have another response on the same? Aya. We want to. Okay. Dr. Cheriot, speak, and then we take questions. And we really want pastoralists to speak, yeah? Because we were here for you. Aya.
What I would really want us to and encourage the primary producers is to take this concern. We know for real we're going to get drought, and it's going to come.
Yeah.
But the most unfortunate thing about our producers, they stick to the animals forever. So what I would want to encourage all of us is let's have feedlotters of taking animals, conditioning them again, and then for onward transmission to processors. That way, everything will be okay. Look at the case where we had drought last time. We lost so many cows. But if we had so many feedlotters around Kajiado, honestly would not have lost, because those are people who are prepared. They know the drought is coming. They have a lot of hay. They have a lot of grains. They have a lot of other concentrates. They can pick those animals. So an animal that would ordinarily give us 30% yield, if it stays in a feedlot, it will go to around 60-70% yield of meat. And that one will be saving this country a lot of waste.
Great. There you go. Aya. Maswali. Nani ana maswali jamani? There's a gentleman at the back over there. Tunataka tuombe as many. Please come to the front kidogo so that you can ask a question and channel it to one panelist so that we manage time. I need to let you guys go by about 3:40 p.m. So let's hear from you. Ladies, you're also encouraged to please ask questions. We want as many of you to speak as possible. But pastoralist, twende.
Okay, thank you to the panel. Information has been very enlightening. And thank you to the organizers of the event. My question is to my friend from KMC. I'm a farmer, first of all. My name is Kenywa. I'm a goat and sheep farmer in Kwale County.
Okay.
And we've had a problem with payments from KMC. I'd like to know how that is being addressed, first of all. And secondly, I'd like to know your current sheep and goat prices.
Sheep and goat prices. All right. That's it. Any other maswali yoyote? There's another gentleman on this other side. Would be really happy if ladies would ask questions.
Hello. Thank you. I wanted to ask all of you. I'm here just to wear the hat of climate issues as part of my climate action plans. We know that Kenya has almost 75 to 80% of rangeland. The production of meat is coming from animals. What are you doing about it on matters of climate conservation? Another question, I've raised eyebrows when you talked about fodder as being part of animal production. Indeed, it should be handled by agronomists. It has been neglected. It is being placed as part of, it's being placed as crop. And I remember 2021, the banks, if I may not remember the name of the banks, they funded grass for cash in the western side of Kenya. I don't know whether you have the information about that. To my surprise, western sides of Kenya does not do production of fodder as such, very little. Most of our animal and meat production is done in the rangeland areas. What are you all doing about it? And for the favor of this country, climate is a major concern. Meat production, we have high end waste production. You have been asked about circular system that you are taking. I will wish maybe if you can clarify for us if there is any way you're doing the circular approach of it. I cannot be fully relied on the data that you have. Consumption of meat is done 100%. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there's another gentleman here. Another gentleman. Yeah. That gentleman.
Yes, I am Abdinasir from Isiolo County.
Yes.
Fara and Garbatula sub-county. So we are very appreciating this conversation method you are using. And bottom-up transformation we are appreciating. We as the community of down there, we have affected a lot by drought. Our goat, sheep, cows have already suffered. We have lost a lot. But now we are planning to recover all the problem. We are really, we have commercial fodder production, which is going on. Feedlotting is going on. And now, one of our problem is targeting market, like Kenya Meat Commission. So how can we come contact with them, and how can we come contract with them to get the benefit from that Kenya Meat Commission? Thank you.
All right. Sorry? Yeah, I think the panelists can respond. Oh, or we have another. Fine. Let's take that one last question. And gentlemen, or there's another one here. So let's take that, and then we just respond and close the panel. Gentlemen, we've talked about everything except insurance. I don't know who would want to speak about that. David? Sorry, you're the lowest hanging fruit. Please, talk about insurance at some point. Yeah, especially building a case in light of the natural calamities you're facing and general risk, as it were. Yes.
Can I ask, I am Benson Longor. I work for the county government of Turkana.
Ah, great. Karibu sana.
As the director of veterinary services.
Karibu sana.
And I've seen my senior, Dr. Cheriot. I wanted to ask the panelists, the northern Kenya is endowed with high population of livestock. And always the traders must drive these animals to the processing plants. Yet, we have an option to have a meat processing plant, just like the Kenya Meat Commission, just as the farm gate. For example, Turkana and Marsabit and the rest of the areas. Has this option been explored? Because Okwir and Professor Gaduma had done in some time in 1988 an economic viability for this particular sector in northern Kenya. And there was a proof that we could break even by actually having such plants in northern Kenya. This is an option that we have. And I am asking that, is it an option for the meat processing plants that are right here in Nairobi and surroundings to be relocated, or a branch in northern Kenya?
Thank you, Mr. Longoro, for that question. I think we take the last one and then we move.
Thank you. My question goes to Bwana Cheruyot from KMC. Before you start maybe producing the quality meat, we used just to bring the live weight and you measure and then you get paid. But currently you want a quality meat from us. And I think that's something which is scaring most farmers, because you might bring your animal and maybe wait for a specific time to be taken into quarantine, and then you wait. Is that not maybe reducing my number of kilograms? Because I might be a businessman going to the market, I measure my cages, I bring all the way from the rangeland to the meat produce, and then, you know, I'm asking about the kilograms, because maybe I'm expecting 400, finally I'm told it's 370.
Great. Dead weight versus live weight. I think those are good points. Could we start responding? And then we just end the panel. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Let me start by answering the question that was last. My friend from, is it Sambur? Is it Kajiado Narok? Yes. Now, what we are currently doing, we've had a paradigm shift from buying animals based on live weight because of specific reasons, which I may not cite for today. But what we are doing currently, we are doing it based on carcass weight and grading. Yeah, we did not mention earlier that we do grading. We actually do grading, so we have several grades. Currently, there are 4 grades that we are paying farmers based on. And we've organized ourselves in the manner that our animals are rested for a maximum of 12 hours. So when you bring your animals, like when we schedule you to bring today, if you come in the evening, those animals will be rested until the following day for slaughter. And if you come in the morning, we'll rest for 6 hours. This is just for conditioning the meat and the cow to release stress and other factors that make the meat not very good. So you will not undergo any losses, absolutely. So you can engage me. I'll give you the prices for the various grades, and be sure we normally do it as fast as possible. And you can wait for your yield the same day. Dr. Longor, actually we are aware Turkana, and I don't know whether many of us know, Turkana County is the largest in terms of population of cattle. Unfortunately, those cows don't end up in Kenya Meat Commission. Neither do they end up in Nairobi or Dagoretti market. No. There are so many factors surrounding that, and I think we need to discuss that. One, the animals appear at times are smaller, and the yield need to be done something about it. And somebody talked about breeding. Our peers talked about the breeds. That's one of the factors that we really need to look into. So, Dr. Ari, you know of the World Bank programs where they put up slaughterhouses in this country. There's none in Turkana, but you must have had our team from Kenya Meat Commission. About 2 years ago, they visited Lokichogio, the low-meat slaughterhouse that was started by AMREF, and it's still on. So the logistics are still being looked into, and probably once those ones are done with, then probably something would be said. Otherwise, we really want to process livestock near where they are. It is easier to transport meat than to transport cattle all the way to this place. My friend from Isiolo, I didn't get your name, I will encourage you that you can take my number later so that we can discuss. We will give you contracts. And in fact, what we are trying to support currently, we want to support farmer groups. So if farmers come together, we can easily give a contract to those people, because those are the people we can link even to financiers. We can also give our extension services or link you to consultants in the livestock sector so that you get the real training on how to produce animals. And you, by the way, you're going to be the first people whom traceability can be done, because more or less you're going to be a small quarantine place. So we will discuss that one too. Bwana Kinywa, I'm not sure whether this is the farm I came to in Kwale, and I did visit one of the farms in Kwale, and I was so impressed. And I want to ask to answer your question on payments. Currently, Kenya Meat Commission pays. There was a hitch some times back. Around last year, around November through to December, we had issues. But those ones have been surmounted. And as we speak today, our farmers who supplied on 4th of June have been paid. So you can see that's pretty less than 10 days. We want to give an assurance of up to 2 weeks. But more often, we want to work on, when we do serious contracting, we can say 1 month so that you can also use it to plan. But currently, because of our liquidity, we are able to pay even within a week. Secondly, again, why we are doing that as a commission, we have started doing more of cash sales. So we've got franchises who pay before picking meat. There are people who are selling in the supermarkets. They also pay before picking the meat. So that the Kenya Meat Now Commission is so liquid, I mean, it's more liquid than it was before. Initially, we used to supply government agencies, and that was a problem because depending on their AIEs, depending on the releases of exchequer to those institutions, it becomes a problem. When they don't have money and they have not taken our meat, then we get into that problem. So we are now trying to turn it around so that we have more of cash on our meat basis so that we are able to pay the farmers as frequently as possible. For sheep and goats, currently we are also doing carcass, and currently we are paying Kenya shillings 650 for oat traced carcass weight, 650 per kg of carcass. I think more or less I've answered. I did not get the question from our producer from Western, but I think maybe our colleague must have gotten something. Yeah.
Okay. Any other panelists that had a question?
Maybe to debunk on the contract farming and why most off-takers don't find it lucrative is because we all produce in a seasonal manner, and there's no value as a processor. We're in the heart of a processor to give you a contract, and all of us will produce when it is during the rainy season. So we, as Gatsby Africa, what we are promoting is consistency in supply of quality and numbers. That is the only way, and that then brings us to the conversation of the day, feed and fodder. How do you produce in January throughout the year and in February during drought and produce during wet season? Then the conversation on contracting makes sense. But as a processor, if you go out of the market and you can buy, and all of us have a the value of the contract, that does make sense. Second question on climate change. What are we doing as development is that one of the ways of reducing emission from ruminants is reducing their life cycle by increasing productivity. We were told in the morning it takes about 4 to 5 years to produce a cow. Also this morning we were told by a panelist that the average carcass they are getting now is live weight is 280 to 300 plus. Basically there is a huge opportunity again to put in another 100 kilos on the same animal over another 100 days, again getting more meat, an additional 50, 60 kilos, which is again reducing emission per kilo of meat. And so we are cognizant of the fact that rangelands will be the resource for primary production, but there's a huge opportunity for secondary production and adding value to the same unit of cattle over a short period of time, reducing emission. And that is where the business opportunity is.
Great. Any other panelists with a response? Dave, I think we talked briefly about insurance as a way of also de-risking investment and bankability.
I don't know whether we have anyone representing KDC, the Drive project, because they also have a huge component of insurance. I'm not an expert in that area, but I would like to, in fact, when you mentioned about me responding to the question, I would have told you that I'm on the demand side of insurance. Like the feed and fodder sector is demanding insurance.
Yeah.
The livestock sector would like to have insurance.
Yeah.
And what you observe is that where finance prevails, insurance also prevails.
Right, yeah.
Because they are all very careful about risk. But what insurance does is that if they think that it is still worth insuring and it's risky, then they increase the premiums. So if you find it is not viable, economically viable for you, then you don't insure. Yeah. Now, I have seen great developments in the insurance sector. Previously, there was a problem because, first of all, insurance was not speaking to a death of an animal on account of feeding challenges. It is not part of the risks that they list on their the risk that they insure.
Yeah.
But what they have begun to do, of course, there was also that idea of compensating on the basis of body condition loss. Like if they get to a level where the condition is certain, they're not dead, but the condition is lost, a lot of loss of flesh, then they do a compensation, which is also really scientifically, for those who understand livestock much better than me, because I'm not a core expert in livestock business, in livestock science. Then when an animal has reached that level of body condition loss, in a herd of 1,000, most likely, whether you compensate or not, if the drought continues, they are dying. So you have compensated, but they are still worsening day after the other. So what they have now moved to is a case of medical insurance, where they kind of, they have an operating insurance that allows you to respond to the needs of that animal when the animal is living, instead of a terminal demand for compensation when the animal has lost body condition to an extent that that animal cannot survive. So we are seeing great responses, but one that has been very successful is where insurance product is blended on a financing product. The loan you take in a bank has a component you pay for that allows an insurance. Yeah. For less riskier cases, they are just insuring in case the person to pay the loan is not there anymore. But it's also possible, because you have seen the bank assurance departments of banks, it means that it is a very, by design, they're able to load on insurance on financing, and that insurance that is loaded on financing, on a credit facility, can be developed, it can go any direction. They may decide to put more, to cover more risks, as long as financing, there's a credit facility on that business. However, if there's no financing and financing is not interested in that sector, then you have much less insurance penetration on that sector. And currently, I don't think that we have very successful stories for insurance as far as feed and fodder is concerned. The outcry is still there, but I must really appreciate the insurance sector because of the responsiveness, particularly not only in the commercial insurance departments or sectors, but in the development sector, where they have put money to test certain products and do proof of concept on how insurance can be developed beyond the traditional insuring methodologies. And have seen projects like ADC doing that. They have demonstrated that insurance is possible beyond the traditional methods. And as others continue to do that, what we could encourage development organizations to do is put money, for example, the grant money, to test these models, because those who are in commercial business are not going to test models because they cannot risk their financing to things that they don't understand. So once these concepts are proven in the development, they're likely going to be designed more accurately in the commercial. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's appreciate our panelists. That's the point where we end our discussion today. We really appreciate if you have been tuning in. We have been speaking about making an economic and a business case in the feed and fodder sector, which is fast becoming a key component in the livestock production sector as a country. And I hope that you have gotten a nugget or two from our panelists here at the KICC Kenya Meat Expo 2024. We will be here tomorrow once again, and on Friday. Please make a point of coming if you can. If you're in Nairobi and its environs, Nation Media Group and NTV invites you to make a point of coming to KICC for a personal experience and a personal touch of what the meat sector is like. From me to you and our panelists here at the station, we want to just wish you a good viewing of the rest of the programs, and that's where we end it at. And thank you so much for all those who made it here to be in a live audience. We really appreciate it. See you tomorrow at the Meat Expo once again. Thank you for tuning into NTV.
This is NTV.
Wiki hii katika kupatana.
Tonight, I think is one of the most weirdest of stories.
Urafiki wetu na Geoffrey ulianza wakati niliingia kwa Ndudi.
And you've been working together na Brian.
Yeah. Paka ikafika juzi yenye sasa mashida zilianza.
Ikapata ameingia kwa nyumba na kacha bike hapo nje ilikuwa na key.
Kutoka nje sasa niingewera nikakosa bike. Nilijua tu imeibiwa.
Geoffrey feel kama ilikuwa kuzoeana.
That's why nilikuwa nimeichukua cause alikuwa best yangu.
The beauty soaps I know don't give germ protection.
Dettol Skincare does. It combines the trusted protection of Dettol with 2 times moisturizers to protect my skin from germs and keeps my skin soft with a beautiful fragrance. Beautiful skin is germ-free skin.
This season has been hectic. Where? It was these big animals. I was like, hey, what is happening?
What could possibly go wrong? Literally, there was somebody who was flipped in the air. We got very nice landscape shots.
It's a total upgrade in the editing technique.
Do you know why elephants in Tsavo are red? Have you ever seen a hippo capture?
You can't afford to miss this season.
Times already.
And your video's gone viral. Who posted that thing?
I know who posted it. Why don't you confront him? Because that will be pointless.
If you decide to agree to my plan, Leo, we'll get along much better.
What is it that you want me to do?
I want JC dead, and I want his parents to witness his death. Leo, your mom took my gun because it's missing.
John! I'm going to kill you!
Fists of Fate.
Mortein Doom, with its trusted formulation. It provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria.
Mortein Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.